In the snowy hills of Colorado, a Marine came home hoping for peace. But life had one final battle waiting for him, a silent war inside his chest, a diagnosis no soldier can outrun, and a loyal German shepherd who refused to surrender hope. As his strength faded, their bond only grew stronger, proving that love is the greatest weapon God ever gives us. When the day came for him to leave this world, the dog stayed at his grave, through storms, through bitter cold, through every lonely night. Until one morning, the town discovered a miracle that only heaven could explain, because some promises are too sacred for death to break. If you believe God still works through loyal hearts, don't scroll away. Hit subscribe, share, and comment Amen to help spread this story of faith, loyalty, and the love that waits for us in heaven. May the Lord bless and protect everyone watching this right now. Autumn in Colorado always arrived with a quiet kind of beauty, a mixture of golden leaves, crisp winds, and the smell of pine carried through the air. The small town where we lived, Cedar Grove, sat nestled beside a stretch of thick forest that climbed up toward the snow-tipped mountains. The weather could be harsh whenever sudden cold fronts swept through, transforming warm sunsets into freezing nights in just a few minutes. People here had learned to respect nature, to live with its unpredictability. I admired it too, although from a much lower height and closer to the ground than everyone else. My name is Rex. I am a 10-year-old German shepherd with thick black and tan fur, strong legs once capable of running faster than the wind, and ears that stand tall every time I sense something unusual. Age has made my steps slower and my coat a little less glossy, but loyalty remains the strongest muscle in my body. I live with Thomas Miller, a man whose heart is larger than any mountain in this town. Thomas is in his early 60s, tall but slightly hunched from years of military service. His hair has turned mostly gray, though a few stubborn dark strands still remind the world of the strength he once carried. His face is defined by sharp cheekbones and a firm jawline, but the small wrinkles forming around the corners of his kind brown eyes show how gentle he has become in his later years. Once a Marine, always a Marine. That is what his fellow veterans say. Yet the war that built his courage also left invisible scars that sometimes make his voice quiet and his gaze distant. He prefers life here, away from the noise of the city, where the forest gives him a sense of peace that he says he fought for all his life. Our wooden cabin sits on the edge of Cedar Grove Forest, painted a warm brown that matches the earth around it. It is a simple home, with a small porch where Thomas often sits in the evenings, holding a cup of hot coffee. From there he can watch the sky change from gold to purple. I always sit beside him, my head resting against his leg. We do not need words. His hand gently rubs behind my ears, and that alone tells me everything is right in the world. I first met Thomas years ago when the world felt colder and lonelier for both of us. Back then, I was just a frightened young dog living in a noisy animal shelter. The place smelled of fear and hope mixed together. Dogs barked day and night, some hopeful for a family, others resigned to the idea that no one wanted them. My fur was dirty, my bones too visible under my skin, and I did not understand why humans always walked past without stopping for me. Until Thomas came. He was still in uniform then, freshly retired from the Marine Corps, carrying that heavy silence of someone who had seen too many things. He looked at me, really looked, like he understood the pain of being left behind. He crouched down, his large hands reaching toward me gently. I remember inching closer to him, trembling but hopeful. He smiled, Not wide or loud, but steady and reassuring. That day he took me home, and that day my life finally began. Every morning for the past 10 years, Thomas and I have followed the same routine. At sunrise, he ties on his worn-out hiking boots, while I wag my tail excitedly at the door. We go running along the forest trail, the cold air waking both of us up better than any alarm. Thomas breathes deeply, eyes alert, scanning the forest like it is his duty to protect it. Sometimes we stop by a small river where he lets me drink and splash around. He laughs whenever I shake water onto him, a soft, warm laugh that seems too kind for someone trained in combat. Hunting trips are reserved for weekends, not the cruel kind of hunting. Thomas only hunts what he needs for food, and he always thanks the animal for its sacrifice. He taught me to track quietly and wait patiently, never chasing for sport. He says respect must always come first. These outings make him proud, and seeing him proud fills me with something like joy in my canine heart. When we are not outside, Thomas keeps himself busy with small woodworking projects in the shed. He builds birdhouses, wooden toys, and occasionally repairs furniture for neighbors who live a few miles away. People in Cedar Grove respect him. They know he is a man who would help anyone without needing to be asked. Although he rarely invites others into our cabin, he treats strangers with dignity. Some say he is too quiet, but they do not know how loud memories can be inside the mind of a soldier. My world is simple, but full. Thomas feeds me with the best food he can afford, brushes my fur every evening, and checks my paws after every walk. Although he never complains, I have learned to read the fatigue in his movements. Sometimes he coughs uncontrollably, clutching his chest while trying to hide the pain with a forced smile. I do not like those moments. I nudge him with my nose until the coughing stops, and his hand returns to my head. He always whispers, "Thanks, buddy," as if I am doing something extraordinary. To me, protecting him is not a task. It is my purpose. As autumn deepens, nights grow colder faster than either of us expects. Thomas wraps himself in an old green jacket that once belonged to the Marines. It still fits, although time has loosened the fabric around his shoulders. Each evening, when the sun melts into the horizon, we sit on the porch and admire its final glow. The forest falls quiet, birds finding their nests while the wind whistles through fallen leaves. Thomas gently scratches under my chin. "Life is good, Rex," he says, and I believe him, because with him beside me, nothing has ever felt uncertain. My memories are stitched together by these small moments: the warmth of a fireplace, the taste of fresh streams, the steady sound of his footsteps as he walks ahead of me. I follow him because he once followed his country. Now he finally follows peace, and I am honored to guard that peace for him. I do not know what the future holds. Dogs do not worry about tomorrows like humans do. All I know is that the world is perfect whenever Thomas smiles, and I can lie beside him, watching the day fade into night. As far as I am concerned, these peaceful days are all we will ever need. Our life together is enough. My heart cannot imagine anything changing. Life is good. Life is him. I am Rex, and my story begins with love. The first sign that something was truly wrong came one cold morning as the sun struggled to rise behind the mountains. The sky was a pale gray, as if nature itself hesitated to start the day. Thomas bent down to tie his boots, but instead of standing back up quickly like he always did, he froze, clutching his chest. His coughing erupted violently, forcing him to brace one hand on the wall to steady himself, His face tightened as if each cough cut through him like a blade. I rushed forward, placing my head under his hand to support him. He gave a strained smile, pretending everything was fine, yet his skin had turned a sickly pale shade beneath his weathered wrinkles. When the coughing finally stopped, Thomas exhaled a shaky breath and whispered, "I'm okay, buddy." He was not. The next days were filled with symptoms he could no longer hide. He moved slower, his shoulders drooped more heavily, and simple tasks left him breathless. He coughed late at night, trying to muffle the sound so he would not worry me. His strong marine posture now faltered under a weight only he could feel. I followed him everywhere, alert and anxious. One afternoon, Thomas drove us into town. The low rumble of the truck and the worry heavy in the air told me this was not a usual trip. The hospital in Cedar Grove was a modest building, clean but old, with white walls and the faint scent of disinfectant drifting from its entrance. Inside, a nurse greeted Thomas warmly. Her name tag read Nurse Emily. She was a woman in her late 40s, with curly chestnut hair tied back neatly, soft hazel eyes, and a calm demeanor that made people feel safe. Her presence seemed practiced in compassion, the kind earned through years of comforting the sick and frightened. She knew Thomas by name, evidence that this visit was not his first. Emily guided Thomas to a room, and I lay quietly at his feet. A doctor entered shortly after. He introduced himself as Dr. Alan Cooper, a tall man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and rectangular glasses that rested low on his nose. His voice was gentle, yet carried the seriousness of someone who delivers more bad news than good. The stethoscope around his neck gleamed under the harsh hospital lights, while his sharp eyes revealed little but professional resolve. His posture suggested the weight of responsibility, and small creases across his forehead hinted at worry that never fully left him at the end of the day. Thomas allowed them to run tests while I waited, ears perked, pacing every time he disappeared behind a closed door. Hours passed like slow-falling snow. When Thomas finally sat across from Dr. Cooper in his office, the air thickened. The doctor's expression changed in a way I had never seen before. He folded his hands slowly, searching for the right words. "Thomas," he said softly, "it is advanced lung cancer. The tumors have spread. At this stage," his voice lowered further, "we are looking at only a few months, maybe less." Silence crashed into the room like a falling tree. Thomas stared forward, jaw clenched, trying to absorb the cruelty of the truth. His strong hands, once steady in battle, trembled slightly. I nudged my head against his knee, sensing fear that he refused to show. Emily placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, her eyes full of sympathy. Dr. Cooper outlined treatment options that might ease the pain but could not stop the inevitable. Every word carved deeper into the reality that time was slipping away from us. During the drive home, Thomas kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting on my back. His breathing was uneven, but his touch remained steady, as if he was grounding himself on the only certainty he had left. The mountains we always admired seemed darker that evening, their peaks swallowed by heavy clouds. At home, he sat on the porch staring at the horizon long after the sun had vanished. The cold wind cut through his jacket, but he did not move. His thoughts were far from the peaceful days we used to treasure. When his gaze finally lowered to me, there was no fear for himself in his eyes, only worry. "What's going to happen to you, boy?" he murmured, voice barely above the wind. He spent the next morning making a phone call he had avoided for years. He hesitated before dialing, gripping the phone tightly. When the call connected, A younger man's voice answered. Dad? The surprise and concern in the tone told me instantly who he was. Michael Miller, Thomas's son. Michael, in his early 30s, lived several towns away. He worked as a firefighter, a job that shaped a strong, athletic build and a selfless heart. His hair was sandy brown, cut short, and he carried a confident presence typical of someone trained to run toward danger while others ran away. Life had not always been simple between him and Thomas. Distance and pride had created silence where love still existed. Yet Michael's voice held immediate worry once he heard the weakness in his father's breathing. Thomas did not reveal everything, but he asked Michael for something that cost him more than any battle he had fought. He asked him to take care of me when the time came. A heavy request that meant acknowledging the end. Michael fell silent for a moment, then agreed wholeheartedly. He promised he would come soon and promised that I would never be alone. After the call, Thomas leaned back and closed his eyes. Exhaustion settled into him more each day. I curled beside his feet, sensing the future closing in. My heart did not understand sickness or death, but it understood fear. Something was coming, something that threatened our simple world. Yet Thomas still managed a small smile, placing his hand over my head. "We're not done yet, Rex," he whispered gently. Not yet. The days after Thomas's phone call became slower, as if time respected his weakened body and tried to move carefully around him. The autumn air grew colder, sharpening the wind that swept through the trees around our cabin. I stayed close to Thomas wherever he went. If he stood, I stood. If he sat, I leaned against him. If he slept, I rested with my head on his chest so I could feel the rhythm of his heart, a rhythm that seemed softer each day. One morning, I heard the sound of a truck engine approaching before it appeared at the end of the driveway. I ran forward, ears high, tail slightly raised though not wagging with excitement like before. The driver's door opened, and a tall, strong young man stepped out. His sandy brown hair was covered by a dark blue firefighter cap. His broad shoulders filled his jacket, and his boots hit the ground with confidence. His eyes, the same warm brown as Thomas's, searched the house anxiously. This was Michael Miller, Thomas's only son. Michael spotted me and paused. His expression softened as he crouched slightly to my level. "Hey, buddy," he said quietly. His voice carried both affection and uncertainty, as though he wished we were meeting under better circumstances. I studied him carefully. His hands were rough and calloused, proof of a life spent battling flames. A faint scar crossed his left eyebrow, hinting at a dangerous moment that shaped his bravery. He smelled of smoke and fuel, a scent that told stories of heroism and exhaustion. Thomas appeared at the door, leaning heavily on the frame but smiling at the sight of his son. "Michael," he greeted, voice low but warm. They embraced carefully, as if Thomas might break under a strong hug. Michael held onto him a moment too long, unwilling to let go. Inside, they sat in the living room. Michael's eyes drifted to the many military medals on the shelf, then to the old photographs of Thomas and me, hiking, hunting, or simply sitting on the porch. The silence between father and son was full of emotion never spoken. Finally, Thomas cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming," he said. His hand rested on my back protectively. "You know why I asked." Michael nodded slowly. He leaned forward, hands clasped tightly. "I'll take Rex," he promised. "I'll treat him like family. He'll have a good home with me." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, revealing the truth beneath the strong exterior. Fear of losing his father. Thomas inhaled with difficulty, but a small smile appeared on his lips. That's all I needed to hear. He looked down at me and scratched behind my ear. He's a good boy. Saved me more times than I can count. I pressed closer to his leg, sensing something heavy but not fully understanding. Later, Thomas showed Michael the wooden shed where he kept his tools. They spoke quietly, sharing memories. Through the window, I watched them. I saw Thomas stumble once, almost falling. Michael reacted fast, supporting him with a hand on his shoulder. The worry in Michael's eyes shone brighter than the afternoon sun. Inside the cabin, Thomas grew tired quickly. He sat in his old armchair with a blanket wrapped around him. His skin seemed thinner, stretched over bones that had once been strong. His breath sometimes wheezed, and coughing fits left him drained. I remained at his feet, my nose touching the back of his hand. He whispered, "It's okay, Rex," even though it clearly was not. Michael prepared dinner. He was not a skilled cook, but he tried. He made baked chicken and vegetables while glancing at Thomas whenever he thought he was not being watched. His movements were purposeful, as if he had stepped into a role he knew he would soon carry permanently. I detected sadness in every gesture. When evening fell, they stepped outside to the porch. The sky blazed with amber and violet hues, painting the world in warm light. Thomas leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Your mother loved sunsets," he said quietly. His voice carried nostalgia, grief, and love woven together like a single thread. Michael put a hand on his father's shoulder. "I remember," he replied, his voice heavy. I lay beside them, watching their silence unfold into a moment of understanding. Family, though strained by distance and time, had returned when needed most. The bond between humans was something I could not fully grasp, but I sensed its power. As the night grew cold, Thomas struggled to rise from his chair. Michael immediately helped him inside. He guided Thomas to bed, tucking the blanket around him gently. I jumped onto the bed and curled against his side. Thomas rested his hand on my head, fingers weak but full of love. "Stay with me, Rex," he whispered. I closed my eyes, vowing silently that I would protect him even from the darkness that stole his strength. Michael stood at the doorway, watching us with tears he tried to hide. He wiped them quickly, then turned off the light, leaving only the soft glow of the moon shining through the window. The future was coming, fast and unkind. Yet as long as Thomas breathed, I would remain here, his guardian, his shadow, his loyal friend. Because loyalty is not a choice for me, it is my heart, and my heart belongs to him. The first snow of winter arrived without warning, soft flakes drifting from a silent gray sky. They landed delicately on the pine trees, the roof of our cabin, and the porch where Thomas used to sit every evening watching the sun disappear. The world looked peaceful, wrapped in white, but peace felt impossibly far away within our walls. Thomas lay in his bed, his breathing faint like a whisper lost in the wind. His skin had grown pale and thin, his eyes dull, yet somehow still filled with warmth whenever they found me. I rested my head on his chest, counting each shallow breath as though I could keep them from running out. Michael had stayed with us for days, refusing to leave his father's side. He slept little, kept watch constantly, his strong frame now slumped with worry. Dark circles formed beneath his eyes, revealing how fear and sorrow had worn him down. Yet he spoke gently to Thomas, calling him Dad with a tenderness that reminded me of their unspoken bond healing in these final moments. That morning, a calmness settled over the room. The coughing was gone, replaced by a strange, quiet ease. Thomas reached out his trembling hand and rested it on my head. His touch was weaker than ever, yet I felt every ounce of love he poured into that final gesture. His cracked lips curled into a small smile. "Thank you, Rex," he murmured, voice soft but steady. "You've been the best friend a man could ask for." His eyes slowly drifted shut, and the rising and falling of his chest slowed, then stopped. The world froze. My heart refused to understand. I nudged him softly at first, then harder, desperate for him to open his eyes again. Michael pressed his forehead into his hands, shoulders shaking as tears rolled freely. I let out a low whine, the kind of sound that comes only when the soul breaks. The room felt heavier than any battlefield Thomas had ever walked. Neighbors came when they heard the news, offering condolences and quiet prayers. Among them was Mr. Grant, an elderly man with a thick white beard and solemn blue eyes, who lived 2 houses down the forest path. He had a stiff posture from years working as a lumberjack, and though he rarely spoke much, he was respected for his loyalty to the community. He placed a comforting hand on Michael's back and whispered, "Your father was a good man. Cedar Grove won't be the same without him." The day of the funeral arrived beneath a sky so white it almost disappeared into the snow-covered ground. Michael dressed in a black suit, the fabric stretched tight across his broad shoulders, his expression set with determination and grief. He allowed me to ride in the truck with him, insisting I stay close. When we reached the cemetery just outside town, rows of headstones peeked through fresh snow. A small group gathered near a newly dug grave, their breaths visible in the cold air. Thomas's flag-draped coffin stood at the center, a final recognition of his service to the country he had sacrificed so much for. Soldiers from the local veteran group stood in uniform, saluting with solemn respect. I tried to get closer, to stay by Thomas's side, but strong hands gently held me back. I barked, pulled, scratched at the ground, refusing to accept separation. The scent of my human was just inches away, but the world had placed a wall between us that I could not break. Gunshots echoed, a traditional military salute. The sharp sound startled the birds from nearby trees. Michael's jaw clenched, eyes glistening. When the coffin was lowered, the finality struck like a forceful gust of wind to the chest. I howled then, a raw cry tearing from the deepest part of my being. Every emotion I had ever known, love, fear, loyalty, collapsed into that single moment. After the service, Michael led me into his truck. He promised softly, "I'll take care of you, I swear." His hand was warm on my fur, but the warmth felt wrong, as if my body no longer recognized comfort without Thomas beside me. Michael's home was tidy, a small house in town with a neat porch and a fenced backyard. Inside, a framed photograph of Thomas holding me as a pup sat on the mantel. Michael must have placed it there recently, maybe the night before. He tried feeding me a nice dinner, but my bowl remained untouched. My body sat in his house, yet my heart stayed at that gravesite. The next morning, before Michael woke, I pushed open the back door. Snow crunched beneath my paws as I ran, the world blurred around me. Only one direction mattered. It did not take long to reach the cemetery. I found Thomas's grave easily, guided by memory and love. The cold stone marked his resting place. I lay down beside it, pressing my body against the frozen earth, as if I could somehow feel him again. Day after day, I returned. Michael tried to stop me at first, but he soon understood. He stood beside me once, looking down at the grave and then at me. His voice cracked. "You miss him just like I do, huh?" He knelt down, stroking my fur. "He's here, Rex. He always will be." Though he cared for me, fed me, and spoke to me with kindness, my loyalty was buried with Thomas. My heart belonged to only one human, and it refused to leave his side. Winter settled fully over Cedar Grove, thick snow covering every familiar path. The cold air bit sharply, and the wind howled through the graveyard trees like a distant cry. Yet none of it mattered to me anymore. Every day I returned to the same place, lying beside the gravestone that held the name of the only person I ever loved. My legs felt weaker, my breaths slower, but my heart stayed anchored to that spot. Mr. Jenkins, the cemetery caretaker, often found me there. He was a tall, slender man in his late 60s, with a gray mustache and a long wool coat that fluttered behind him in the wind. His movements were slow but careful, as though life had taught him to respect silence. The first few times he saw me lying in the snow, he tried to shoo me away, tapping his glove against his leg and murmuring kindly, "Come on, boy, you'll freeze." But when he saw the determination in my tired eyes, he stopped insisting. Sometimes he brought old blankets or dry food, placing them quietly beside me. He never stayed long, but before he walked off, he always looked back with a heavy sigh, as though he understood what it felt like to lose a piece of your soul. Michael visited whenever he could. He wore his firefighter jacket, zipped high to fight the bitter cold, but even the thick fabric could not protect him from the pain in his chest. He knelt beside me, brushing snow off my fur, his warm brown eyes clouded with grief. "You're still here," he whispered each time. Then he would sit in silence with me, letting his shoulder press against the gravestone, as if he hoped some warmth from his father remained beneath the stone. The radio on his belt often interrupted, reminding him of rescuing others while he himself still needed saving. Before leaving, he always placed his forehead gently against mine, saying, "I miss him too, Rex." As days turned into nights, the world around me faded. The sounds of rustling wind and cracking branches grew distant. My once sharp eyes blurred as if fogged by the past. Lifting my head became harder, and sometimes the cold seeped so deep into my bones that even breathing felt like a battle I no longer wished to fight. But when I closed my eyes, I saw him, clear and strong, not sick, not tired, just Thomas. With his Marine posture straight and proud, his hands capable and warm, memories kept me alive, even as my body begged to let go. One night, the snow fell thicker than ever before. The sky was pitch black, without the moon to soften its darkness. Frost clung to my fur like tiny shards of glass. I curled tightly against the gravestone, trying to feel closer to him. The cold no longer scared me. It simply felt like a doorway. My heartbeat slowed. My breaths grew softer. And just when my eyes grew too heavy to keep open, I saw him standing there. Thomas looked just as he did during our best days. His hair was dark again, his face full of strength, his smile wide and full of life. He wore his Marine jacket, the one he used to drape over me when I was cold. His eyes were bright, warmer than any fire. He reached out his hand. "Come on, buddy," he said gently. "Let's go home." I stood up without pain. My legs felt young and strong again. The cold vanished. I barked with joy, bounding toward the man who had saved me once before, and was saving me again now. When I reached him, he dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around me, His laughter rumbled against my chest, and I pressed my face into his jacket, inhaling the scent of home. Then we ran, through a forest glowing with golden sunlight. No fences, no sickness, no sorrow, just freedom. Just us. Together again, exactly as it was always meant to be. Morning came softly. The first ray of sun touched the graveyard, lighting up the snow like scattered diamonds. Mr. Jenkins found me lying still, curled peacefully against the gravestone, my head resting where Thomas's name was carved. He removed his hat and stood in silence, understanding without a word. News spread quickly through Cedar Grove. People who had known Thomas returned once more to honor the loyal companion who refused to leave his side. Michael arrived, his eyes red but full of pride. He knelt beside me, gently placing his hand on my fur. "You kept your promise," he whispered. "He's waiting for you up there." With permission from the cemetery, Michael buried me right beside Thomas. Two best friends, two soldiers of the heart, together forever under the same sky. Some say dogs do not understand love. They say dogs only act on instinct. They are wrong. Love was all I ever understood. Love was all I ever wanted. And love is what carried me home. In a world that often feels cold and uncertain, love remains the greatest miracle God ever gave us. It is love that brought a Marine and a loyal German Shepherd together. It is love that carried them through every hardship. And it is love that reunited them in heaven, where no sickness, no war, and no goodbye can ever tear them apart again. If you believe God still performs miracles through the hearts of ordinary people and the loyalty of His creatures, then you already carry His light within you. Look around in your everyday life, because His blessings hide in the small acts of kindness, in the friends who stay, and in the pets who love us more than they love themselves. Before you scroll away, please help spread this story of faith, loyalty, and God's eternal promise. Hit share, comment Amen, and subscribe to join our community of believers who celebrate the love that never ends. May God bless you, protect your family, and fill your home with peace, hope, and miracles every single day. Amen.